There is a lot of information out there about exactly how much protein we should be eating each day, but it can be hard to know for sure what's best suited for you. Registered dietitian Andrea Holwegner joins us this morning with some advice. Thanks for coming in, Andrea.
Thanks for having me.
Protein is a really essential part of our diet. Talk a little bit about that.
Sure. So we need protein for a couple of reasons. The first thing, from a satiety and fullness perspective, if we plan meals without good protein-rich foods, we simply get a little hungrier too soon. And then in terms of what's happening in the body, we need protein for muscle repair and structure building. Often people think if I eat more protein, it's going to build muscle, but it doesn't really happen that way. We've got to exercise the muscle, and then protein-rich foods help to repair. And then we also need protein for immune function, for enzymes, hormones, healthy skin, hair, and fingernails, all sorts of important things.
So it is vital for our diet.
You bet.
Some great examples here of food items that have protein in them. And it's funny because when you think of protein, you often think you need the steak, you need to get your meat in, but obviously not the case.
So many protein-rich foods. Obviously, if you're a meatitarian, like some of the clients that we see, of course, you're going to think of things like your beef, chicken, seafoods, eggs, dairy-rich foods. One of the things that people often don't realize is actually dairy foods are actually very high in protein. So, for example, a cup of milk has 8 or 9 grams of protein.
Oh, wow.
Whereas an egg has about 6.
Okay.
And then if we were to look at like the size of the palm of my hand or a deck of cards, that's about 20-25 grams of protein if we're thinking about a piece of steak or something like that.
And that's about how much you should have per day, or how do you know what's enough for you?
You know, generally what we're after is about 10 to 35% of your total calories coming from protein. And that's a really broad range. And that means for a vegetarian or a vegan, they're going to be at about 10% protein.
Okay.
And they're going to be choosing your chickpeas, your nuts, your seeds, your lentils. You know, even some of our grains like your quinoas or pastas are very rich in protein as well. And then if you're more of a meatitarian, we expect you're probably going to be on the high end of that range, around the 35% of your total diet.
And if you're exercising, I would imagine, or working out a lot, perhaps training for a marathon, what have you, you're going to probably need more.
You know, athletes do need a little bit more protein, coming back to that function of repairing muscle tissue. But the interesting thing is it doesn't mean that they necessarily have to eat more protein.
Okay, that's interesting.
So the guidelines for most sports are anywhere between about 1.2 to 1.8 grams per kilogram of your body weight. That's what the sports nutrition research suggests, and if we extrapolate that out into how much you would need per day, it still falls within those guidelines for the 10 to 35% of your total protein per day, which if you're on a 2,000 calorie diet as a gauge, somewhere between 50 to 175 grams of protein. So it's actually fairly easy for people to get enough protein.
All right. Thanks so much for your advice this morning, Andrea. Some really great tips. If you'd like more details on protein or anything else from Andrea, you can head to her website, healthstandnutrition.com.